Witches will be gathering in Brooklyn, New York this weekend to attempt to cast a spell on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. I could not possibly have made that up. The witches will gather at Catland Books, which says it is Brooklyn's premier occult bookshop and spiritual community space. So if you find yourself in one of Brooklyn's lesser occult bookshops and spiritual community spaces, then you've come to the wrong spiritual community space. The invitation on Catland's Facebook page reads, quote, and this is a real quote, "Please join us for a public hex on Brett Kavanaugh upon all rapists and the patriarchy at large, which emboldens, rewards, and protects them. Kavanaugh will be the focal point, but by no means the only target, so bring your rage and all of the axes you've got to grind," unquote. Now, clearly, witches casting spells on a conservative justice is very politically appropriate, since nothing says leftism like bizarre superstition mixed with rage and hideous-looking green-skinned women with warty noses grinding their axes. In fact, I think the actual dictionary definition of leftism might be superstition, rage, and hideous-looking women grinding axes. According to the invitation, the hexing will feature a ceremony in which Nancy Pelosi and two other hideous crones dance around a boiling brew in a huge black kettle, singing double, double, we're in trouble, Obama's policies are rubble, eye of Newt, and toe of Mitch. I can't think of a rhyme for Mitch that fits Pelosi, so I'll leave it there. Anyway, the invitation says there'll also be a second ritual afterward called, again, this is real, the Rites of the Scorned One. So I guess Hillary Clinton will be on hand as well. The witches say they're hoping a ceremony of malevolent females intoning useless nonsense in service to the evil one will attract everyone who still believes in the Democrat Party. Namely, malevolent females intoning useless nonsense in service to the evil one. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. Senator Elizabeth Warren has released a DNA test proving that she is just about as white as it is possible for a girl to be without actually becoming invisible. Warren took the test after being taunted by President Trump for falsely claiming she was part Cherokee. Now, don't misunderstand me. There's nothing at all wrong with being a white woman. Many of the Rockettes are white women. And of course, Gwyneth Paltrow is very attractive as well. But the problem for Warren, or to use her native name, Dances with Horse Manure, is that she listed herself as Native American on federal forms when she taught law school, and she repeatedly told the story of how her parents had to elope because of anti-Indian prejudice. But that story now seems to confirm Warren's native name lies like a dog, because according to even the suspect analysis of a Stanford University professor she happens to know, Warren has got so little Indian blood in her, it may just be because one of her ancestors got some on his shirt when he was killing one of them. In any case, Senator Warren, whose native name is Woman Who Would Cheat to Be President, has less Indian DNA than most white Americans and far less than what's required to claim membership in anything but the Malarkey tribe. The news media was quick to back Warren's blatant lies, running such headlines as the Boston Globe headline, quote, "Warren lied about her ancestry, now we will too," unquote. The USA Today headline, quote, "We hate Donald Trump, so we'll pretend to believe Warren," unquote. And of course, the New York Times headline, quote, "Trump slaughters entire Indian village in our imagination," unquote. Warren herself, speaking under her native name, Walks Like a White Girl, told reporters, quote, "I will fight no more forever. I go to join the great spirit in the happy hunting ground. Trump give heap big wampum or speak with forked tongue. How Kimosabi," unquote. Sounds authentic to me. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, I'm back speaking as a black woman from my DNA test. So I didn't want to talk about any more about this Elizabeth Warren show, but this Elizabeth Warren story, but I got to talk about it because of the media, because of the way the media is doing it. And I want to just talk about, I want to tell the real story here so you actually can see what is going on. You know, there's an old Latin tag, falso in uno, falsus in omnibus. If you're false in one thing, you'll be false in everything. And so as you're listening to this story, as you're hearing it on NPR, on ABC, on NBC, in the New York Times, is any left-winger asking himself, if they would lie about this, if they would twist this, if they would con me about this, What else are they conning me about? What else are they scamming me about? How much of their opinions are false? What about their movie reviews? What about their headlines? Is everything just a scam from these people? I think it is a fair question to ask when you see this, because here it is laid out right in front of you. All these headlines saying Warren confirms her Indian heritage. Warren gets her ancestry right. Oh, Donald Trump was wrong about this. Remember, this is Donald Trump. He has been kidding her, calling her Pocahontas. It's supposed to be Fauxahontas, right? Because it's F-A-U-X. She's the fake Pocahontas. Harvard, when she was teaching there, listed her as one of their women of color. She put on federal forms that she was Native American when she taught at Penn Law School and Harvard Law School. When Trump challenged her, when she was put on the dime, because he's obviously was lying, she told this story over and over. Again, her parents, it was supposed to touch you, move you, so you'd feel that Trump was being mean, to the poor Indian woman. First you take her land, then you kill her tribe, you burn her teepees, and then you insult her by saying she's not really. So she would tell the story. So some wag at the Free Beacon just strung together all the time she has told this story. Here is Elizabeth Warren on different shows telling this story over and over again.
Let me tell you a little bit about my family. Let me tell you the story of my family. My mother and dad were born and raised in Oklahoma. My mom and dad were born and raised out in Oklahoma. My mother and daddy were born and raised in Oklahoma. My father fell in love with my mother when they were both still teenagers. My daddy was in his teens when he fell in love with my mother. My daddy first saw my mother when they were both teenagers. A beautiful girl who played the piano. A tall, quiet girl who played the piano. He was just head over heels over her. And he was head over heels in love with her. Head over heels. But his family was bitterly opposed to their relationship. And his family was bitterly opposed to that. But his family was bitterly opposed to their relationship because she was part Native American. Because she was part Native American. Because she was part Native American. My parents eloped. They eventually eloped. They survived the Great Depression. They survived the Dust Bowl. They survived the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl. They went through a lot of hard times, a lot of knocks. They raised 3 boys, my older brothers, all of whom went off to the military. They raised my 3 brothers, all of whom headed off to the military. They hung together for 63 years. They hung together for 63 years. I know who I am because of what my mother and my father told me, from our mom and our dad, what my grandmother and my grandfather told me, from our grandparents, what all my aunts and uncles told me, from all of our aunts and uncles. It's a part of who I am, and no one's ever going to take that away. It's a part of me, and nobody's going to take that part of me away.
They lied to you, Liz. They lied. You got no Indian blood. She goes out, she gets a friend to test. She doesn't even send it to 23andMe, like a reputable company. She gets a friend, and they all have to do this because they don't have a lot of Native American DNA to test it against, right? So what they tested against, they use samples from Mexico, Peru, and Colombia. So she could be a little tiny drop, Aztec maybe, but all of this is to find out that she has between 1/64 and 1/1024 of some kind of, Native North American blood, maybe, okay? Because the whole test seems bogus to me. But maybe, let me play Matt's Idea Shop, who I follow on Twitter, who I really like. He's very funny. He put out what 1/1024 of the movie Pocahontas looks like. Here it is. That's how Indian Elizabeth Warren is at most. I mean, really, it is nonsense. Most Americans have twice as much as she does. And here is what the Cherokee Nation has to say. And I'm just setting this all up. The only reason I'm setting this all up so you can see how the press covered this. Here's what the Cherokee Nation, this is Cherokee Nation Secretary of State Chuck Hoskin Jr. A DNA test is useless to determine tribal citizenship. Current DNA tests do not even distinguish whether a person's ancestors were indigenous to North or South America. Sovereign tribal nations set their own legal requirements for citizenship, and while DNA tests can be used to determine lineage, such as paternity to an individual, it is not evidence for tribal affiliation. Using a DNA test to lay claim to any connection to the Cherokee Nation or any tribal nation, even vaguely, is inappropriate and wrong. It makes a mockery out of DNA tests and its legitimate uses while also dishonoring legitimate tribal governments and their citizens whose ancestors are well documented and whose heritage is proved. Senator Warren is undermining tribal interests with her continued claims of tribal heritage. This is the tribe. This is the Cherokees actually saying this, okay? So it's a complete self-own, one of the hilarious terms the internet has given us, a self-own. She has completely made herself look like an idiot. Here is a montage from our friends at Newsbusters of the networks covering this story.
Tonight, calling his bluff after relentless taunts by President Trump over Senator Elizabeth Warren's claims of Native American ancestry.
They call her Pocahontas.
Pocahontas, Pocahontas.
Warren is now answering, her campaign releasing a DNA analysis stating there is strong evidence the senator had a Native American in her family going back 6 to 10 generations. Today, President Trump was dismissive.
Senator Elizabeth Warren releasing DNA test results to back up her claims of Native American heritage.
The report indicates that Senator Warren's Native American ancestor is between 6 and 10 generations back.
They're just lying. They're just lying to defend her. And if they're lying in one thing, are they lying in everything? Is anybody who watches this asking, gee, am I being conned all the time? The United Nations has taken time off from sending peacekeepers to enslave women in the Congo and abuse children on the Ivory Coast and run prostitute rings in Bosnia to warn us all that climate change is going to destroy the world again. The UN's Committee on Screaming Over Unbelievable Disasters, or UNSOUND, has announced that because of climate change, we must dismantle capitalism worldwide or everyone will die. If we do dismantle capitalism, everyone will still die, but they'll die with a lot less money. The UN says that because of climate change, there will soon be heat waves, rainstorms, and floods. These will be much worse than the heat waves, rainstorms, and floods we have now because there'll be no capitalism, so everyone will be poor. Now you can see why climate change is so bad. Now, many people have grown dubious of predictions of climate disaster because they're simply tired of Al Gore dressed in nothing but a towel, chasing masseuses around his hotel room, screaming, "The world is going to end, so touch me now." But the UN says their latest prediction of disaster is much worse than their previous predictions of disaster because they are predicting a much worse disaster. So when it doesn't happen, it'll be much worse than the other disasters that didn't happen in the past. Still, there can be little doubt that the climate is changing and that everyone will die in a spectacular fiery cataclysm just as soon as one of these climate predictions turns out to be correct. How can we avoid this horrifying yet visually stunning fate? Well, the models show that if we get rid of all fossil fuels within 4 years, we could actually stave off the apocalypse. Then we would be able to proudly tell our great-grandchildren, we've saved the planet so you can live horrible, primitive lives in a socialist hellscape. Or we can say screw it and let the little rugrats fend for themselves. Now, for that, trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. Knowles, you're there. So to get you back, I sent you to watch the documentary of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it was great, right?
Would you call it a documentary? Is that I would say that Triumph of the Will offers a more critical analysis of the Reich Party Congress than RBG does of Justice Ginsburg.
That's not entirely fair, you're saying.
Hagiography, I mean, I really mean this. It does not begin to describe what this was. I am not exaggerating. I am not making a joke. I've never seen a hagiography like this. It begins. So it's produced by CNN, which is the best part of it all.
Yeah.
Because it's CNN Films, real news, real bananas. And it opens up, bizarrely, it opens up on the Red Scare. So it's Ruth Ginsburg. She's talking about how awful things used to be in the 50s. You think she would talk about racial segregation or women not, being able to work in certain industries. No, she talks about the Red Scare, which tells you a lot about the point of view of this movie and the point of view of Ruth Ginsburg. The movie's produced by radical leftists, and Ruth Ginsburg is a radical leftist.
She is, isn't she? She really is that far over.
Her whole career, they try to present her as a moderate. who finds her left-wing voice later on. That's not what happened. She was a moderate because the court was very left-wing. And then as George Bush appointed 2 originalists to the court, not even, 1.5 originalists to the court moved to the right. But, you know, her whole career was left-wing. I mean, she began her career as an activist during her Senate confirmation hearings. She said not just that I support the Roe v. Wade decision. She said I support abortion rights. She calls for abortion. She obviously imagined.
She said this before her confirmation?
During her confirmation hearings.
During her confirmation hearings, okay, yeah.
She said, I support abortion. In order for women to be equal, abortion needs to be legal. It needs to be everywhere. So she's being confirmed to the court as an activist.
And did Republicans vote for her?
Of course they did. Republicans voted to confirm her. I think it was 96-3. And the movie makes a point about this.
Yeah.
The movie says, they actually have Bill Clinton, of all people, who nominated her, say, well, you know, look, it was a less partisan time, but it was still pretty partisan. Yes, it was partisan when it was conservative justices who were being nominated.
So their point is that she was so wonderful that even the right had to vote for her, which is really, but the real point is the right plays fair.
That's right.
And the left doesn't. Yeah,
that's right. You know, you'd have people like John McCain. I sort of admire this about McCain. He would vote for any judge. Any judge who goes up, he says the president has the right to appoint the judges. Right. Might not like them, but the left doesn't abide by that rule. So, you know, Ginsberg comes out in 1993. This is 2 years after Clarence Thomas, 2 years after a high-tech lynching. They also try to imply in the movie that Ruth Ginsberg was, you know, the pioneer in women on the Supreme Court. She wasn't the first woman on the Supreme Court. The first woman was appointed by Ronald Reagan.
I know they make a big fuss over the fact she's a woman. Right? Reagan appointed Sandra Day O'Connor.
That's right.
That's insane. Go ahead.
They virtually ignore Sandra Day O'Connor. I like to virtually ignore Sandra Day O'Connor too, because she moved to the left. Yeah. But you know, they virtually ignore her. They try to make Ginsberg the trailblazer, and there's such fiction. It's such a stretch. They're trying to say she is a cultural icon. They call her the notorious RBG. That's from one blog that, like, some people who read everyday feminism seriously use the term. These are direct quotes. Every time RBG wrote a dissent, the internet would explode.
I remember that. I had to pick up the pieces, had to call they were sweeping the internet pieces, shards off the floor. Yeah.
I mean, just as a very basic matter, the woman doesn't trend on Twitter. The internet does not explode over her. They're just crafting this narrative. They say she's become a rock star. The only time that she really went viral on the internet is when she fell asleep during the State of the Union.
True. You know, do they even know what the word notorious means? You know? It's not a good thing, you know.
Yeah, I think they're owning it these days. Yeah. They have this video of her working out. I saw that. So she's working out, and they have this young fit instructor, and he says, "Oh, she's like a cyborg. She's like a machine." See, she does 20 push-ups a day. They talk, but then they film the push-up. She lowers her body, you know, half an inch. I'm not saying, look, she's an older woman.
She's 112 years old.
She's 112 years old. But, and then they say, oh, and they're real push-ups. She's barely moving her body, holding these weights that are 2 pounds.
I like when they have a picture of her doing a plank, and my first thought is, how long has she been in that position? Because if it's over 6 months, you might want to bury her.
Where does core strength end and rigor mortis begin? You know, and the other thing is, during these court hearings, they say that Kavanaugh exposed himself as too partisan. He's too partisan. This woman has been openly partisan for her entire career. Pre-confirmation, post-confirmation, Bush v. Gore. She was one of just 2 justices who voted not to stop the recount.
Wow.
You know, everybody thinks Bush v. Gore was a 5-4 decision. Ultimately, the decision that ended the question of the presidential election was 5-4. The decision to stop the recount was 7-2. It wasn't even close. And she was in that 2 minority. She's been on the radical side of countless cases. But then in the 2016 election, she called Donald Trump a faker. She said she would move to New Zealand if he were elected.
That's right. I remember that, sure.
She was out and out campaigning for Hillary Clinton, campaigning against Donald Trump.
And she's not going to recuse herself from any decisions that have to do with him.
Of course not. But you never hear that she's too partisan, do you? They want to have it both ways. They can't pick a lane. So they say she's too partisan partisan, but we love her because she's she's not too partisan. We love her because she's too partisan, and but Brett Kavanaugh has to withdraw himself.
So now this raises the question, though. All of this stuff is suddenly coming up. Obviously, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is coming to the end of her term here on Earth.
So they say.
Yes, no one lives forever, and so I wish her well. I'm not wishing ill on her, but I'm just saying at some point the curtain comes down. Why is all of this stuff coming up now? What is the argument? What is the secret? Everything that the left does always has the secret argument about why they should have power. What is the secret argument behind a hagiography of Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
Well, they're creating this fiction that a justice should be replaced by someone who is exactly like them. And some Republicans have even bought into this. So now I don't remember this when Merrick Garland was put up for the court, by the way.
Really? When does what right winger in his right mind would buy into that?
Of course, it's absurd, but they're passing it off as true. They're making their movies, and we have to forget history as recent as 2 years ago. We have to forget about Garland going up to replace Scalia, but they're trying to set this up so that if you thought this Kavanaugh fight was bad, just wait until Amy Coney Barrett is up to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They're trying to set that up. They're also trying to use the possible vacancy for the Democrats the way that Republicans used it in 2016. President Trump may have won because Antonin Scalia died when he did, and because Cocaine Mitch behaved the way he did, postponing filling that seat.
I wonder if this new thing about white women is aimed at Amy Barrett too. I mean, I only support Amy Barrett because she's just so hot. I mean, it's like
and Catholic.
I'm Catholic too.
I
know those Catholic girls. My goodness, yeah.
That's right. But the question you've got to ask is, look, I don't like Sandra Day O'Connor, but where's the Sandra Day O'Connor movie?
Right.
Or where's the Antonin Scalia movie? Or where's the Clarence Thomas movie? They make movies about Clarence Thomas, but they're about Anita Hill.
Why is that? That's on us, right? I mean, we're not making those movies.
Yes and no. Look, this movie is very stupid. Several minutes of it are just Ginsburg watching clips of Saturday Night Live praising her and her giggling at them. Then you have clips of her granddaughter talking about Booby, cooking in the kitchen for like a significant portion of this movie. Yeah. So part of it is I think the right is not as easily emotionally manipulated. We're not as, this is sentimental propaganda tripe. And I think we're not really moved by that. We don't really require that to motivate us. But still, people remember the movies. These movies have really lasting effects. Yeah, JFK has lasting effects, right? So I think it would behoove us to do it also because as you've been saying now for decades, conservatives will not spend money on the arts. No, they just don't get it. There's always an emergency. Always a fire they're rushing to put out. What are you talking about on your show today? Today, we're going to talk about the breaking news today. Elizabeth Warren finally admitting that she's 99.9% white. We will be analyzing, we'll obviously be guzzling a lot of these tears because she might be trying to raise heap big wampum on this, but she's not a heap big percentage Native American. You have tormented her people long enough, Knowles. It's like the arrows will fly. Yeah, that's right. Oh no, she got me. I can't wait. Thanks a lot, Michael. I appreciate it. All right, see you. Before we get to our crappy culture, I have to just point out this whole thing about Me Too is actually like a backup of stuff that has been stuffed down because of the need to defend Bill Clinton and his errant wife and their silencing of women who accused him of rape. And there was a cut of Hillary Clinton being asked about whether Bill should have resigned. This is cut number 11. Just play this for a minute.
In retrospect, do you think Bill should have resigned in the wake of the Monica Lewinsky scandal?
Absolutely not.
It wasn't an abuse of power?
No.
There are people who look at the incidents of the 90s and they say a president of the United States cannot have a consensual relationship with an intern. The power imbalance is too great.
Who was an adult. But let me ask you this. Where's the investigation of the current incumbent against whom numerous allegations have been made and which he dismisses, denies, and ridicules? So there was an investigation, and it, as I believe, came out in the right place.
See, this is incredible ignorance that is being sold to you. Your ignorance is being sold to you by that That is not what the Monica Lewinsky scandal was about. The Monica Lewinsky scandal was about Paula Jones, who was selected by Governor Bill Clinton's state trooper who would protect him. And he would come and follow Paula Jones and bring her up to his hotel room, whereupon Bill would chase her around with his pants off, with his pants open, exposing himself to her. And she sued him for it because she didn't want to be used by Bill Clinton. She sued him for it, and he lied about it. If he hadn't lied about it, if he hadn't lied about what he did to Paula Jones, none of this would have happened. During the testimony, he was forced to testify about Monica Lewinsky. And not only did he lie about it under oath, he suborned perjury by causing her to lie about it, to submit a statement about it that was untrue, and causing all the people around him, lying to them, abusing his power by lying to them so that they went and lied for him. That was what the scandal was about. The scandal was about perjury. It was not about whether he was a slime ball for using his immense power to have an affair with a 20-something-year-old girl. But that's not what the scandal was. The scandal was the perjury, and they just are pushing that ignorance on you so you forget what it's all about. Our crappy culture. You know, there's a trial starting that we really want to pay a little bit of attention to. Harvard University is on trial. Oral arguments begin on Monday. For students for fair admissions versus Harvard University. Harvard is accused of systematically discriminating against Asian American applicants in college admissions. They don't want the Asian Americans study so hard, work so hard, do so well academically that Harvard doesn't want the yellow peril to take over their schools. So they've been basically slanting their admissions process to keep them out. And that is what's happening. They're being sued for it. And the question that is going to end up being decided, I think, eventually, is whether or not we can have this racist system that the left has imposed on it. It is affirmative action. You can't cure racism with racism. You cannot cure racism with racism. So by using affirmative action, which is racism, this is the first thing, by the way, the first thing was the Bakke case that alerted me to the fact that my liberal left-wing leanings were wrong. This is the very first thing that when I saw the Bakke case come in and affirmative action starting, I thought, nope, they are just adopting the racism that has been in place for so long. You cannot cure it. Why do they want to do this? I think one of the reasons is once you start getting rid of the racism excuse, oh, you can't say that, you can't criticize Obama because it's racist, you can't criticize a black man kneeling for the flag because it's racist, you can't criticize. Once they do that, they have to deal with behaviors, because the fact is the behaviors of black people and white people who are in poverty are virtually the same. And those behaviors, if you fix those behaviors, or at least educate people out of those behaviors, you start to educate people out of poverty, and they don't become dependent on the government, and they don't really vote for the left quite as much. And that's what they don't want to do. The racism has got to go, and we on the right should stand against it at every single level. There is no excuse for it. It is un-American, it is un-Christian, it is un-Jewish, it is wrong. It is wrong to judge people according to that's it. That's the whole question. Is it right or wrong to judge people according to the color of their skin? Wrong. Anytime they do it, it's going to be harmful to the country in the long run and possibly in the short run. I hope Harvard gets nailed for this. I hope they get nailed. I'll see you again tomorrow. Listen to Another Kingdom. Anybody can listen to the first and second episodes. The third episode is now out for subscribers of dailywire.com. So subscribe while you're listening. You could do everything at once. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is The Andrew Klavan Show.
Oh, hooray, hurrah. The Andrew Klavan Show is produced by Robert Sterling. Executive producer, Jeremy Boring. Senior producer, Jonathan Hay. Our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. Technical producer, Austin Stevens. Edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Cormina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Alvera. And our animations are by Cynthia Angulo and Jacob Jackson. The Andrew Klavan Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2018.